Smooth 98.1. It is gone past 6:34 Tuesday morning, and this is Business Express brought to you by Nairametrics today. I'm Sope Martins, and for the next 15 minutes or so, I have got Mr. Samuel Oyekanmi, who's a macroeconomics analyst with Nairametrics and writer of articles up on Nairametrics as well, because we're going to be talking about one that you wrote. Morning, Samuel. How are you doing?
Very fine. Good morning, Sope. How are you, sir?
I'm good. It's Tuesday morning. It's a fantastic day so far. You know, we're not too far into it, but it's looking good so far. All right, so Samuel, I want people to join this conversation. So y'all, wherever you are in the world, you can join. We are streaming live up on youtube.com/smooth981FM Lagos. You can join us up on the live stream, and you can leave your comments on the live chat. Let us know what you think. You can also send WhatsApp messages to 0809-440-981 or take things over to Twitter using the hashtag BusinessExpress981. All right, so Samuel, today we're going to be talking about the fact that we have spent quite a bit of money. Let me even tell you the number: 57 trillion naira on household consumption in 6 months. Spoiler alert, people, it's gone up from last year. So first things first, Samuel, you're the author of this particular Nairametrics article, and you're going to need to explain some things that we've read inside this article. Okay, so the first thing is, please go ahead and tell us the difference in measuring GDP by expenditure and income from measuring it by output. Like, what's the difference?
Okay, so at the end of the day, the aggregate GDP is still the same, but the component is what is different, what is being made up. What that particular aggregate GDP is made up of. So when talking about output method of estimating GDP, you're basically just measuring GDP by the level of productivity in the economy, and that would require you measuring inputs in terms of or let's say output now in terms of the value of what is being produced, and then the cost of you deduct the cost of producing, then you add taxes and whatnot, VAT and so on and so forth. That's output. Just talking about the monetary value of all goods and finished goods and services that's been produced in an economy in a given point in time. Then the other is when you talk about income method. Income method is basically looking at the earnings of people during that period to aggregate the GDP. So that would be calculating gross profits of businesses, calculating taxes in terms of VAT, calculating earnings, wages and salaries of employees during the period of time. And that would also aggregate to our GDP in terms of income. While for expenditure is spending. So typically, this is the most popular method, and that's in essence is the actual formula for GDP, where you say GDP is equal to consumer spending plus business investment, government spending, then plus net export. Net export, yeah. So that is exactly where this expenditure method comes into play, where you have to talk about consumer spendings, talk about how much the government also spent on maybe education, energy, defense during a period of time. Then you talk about how much business is also invested in terms of buying assets. And then your import and export, the net value, you also include that. That's how expenditure is obtained. So that's the three basic method that's quite popular and known for estimating GDP.
All right. Now, the next thing is let's touch on this number: 57 trillion naira. So that is up like 14.4% from this half-year figure for 2022 is up by 14.4% compared to the corresponding period of last year, 2021. Is that a good thing or a bad thing, first of all? Because it feels like a bad thing, but who knows what the business gurus might tell us?
Yeah, so it feels like a bad thing, but it's not really a bad thing.
Okay.
It's not really a bad thing. So 57 trillion, 14% increase. And so when you go into the data, there's what we call nominal GDP and there's what we call real GDP. Mm-hmm. When we disaggregated them, calculated the percentage change for nominal is just the holistic view, right? While the real value is had already accounted for inflation and had removed effect of inflation. By the time you check the real value, you saw that also increased by 12%. And by the time you now remove for nominal and for real, it means that inflation drove about 2%. It means inflation didn't really drive so much. Maybe people really did spend much. But you also now, there's a caveat, right? You also want to look at the fact that Nigerians are now more, they now have to spend more of their money, despite that they are not earning as much. They're spending more of their money on household expenditure rather than using it on some other things that might not be household related. And that's not so good, especially when you consider the fact that Nigerians spend over half of that money on food. And food security is something everyone is really so conscious about. So if they're spending so much money on food and accommodation and the stuffs in the house, it means they don't have as much money to save or to do some other things that is not related to the house. So yeah, in terms of number, it is not bad. But what it means for the Nigerian economy, it means that Nigerians are now putting more money into household expenses, and that would affect some other things.
Right, because there's this number that people talk about spending, like I think it's 30%, right, of your income that you should be putting towards things like groceries, shelter, transportation, so that you would then be able to save and, you know, figure out your future. But we're not seeing that. So looking at the numbers within this article, right, we've seen household expenditure in these first 6 months of 2022 accounting for 62.4% of total expenditure by the populace. So you've already talked about how, you know, it's gonna have effects if we're spending that much on household consumption. I mean, what other things would we have been spending that kind of money on? What kind of effects are we going to see? What does it all mean?
For example, if I right now earning salary and I am spending over 60% of my income on household expenses, that leaves me with a little over 30%. And I would want to invest. I would also want to save for the future. I have plans to travel out or even take a vacation, at least take care of myself. I work, right? I want to enjoy myself. So
vacation. 60% everything going on in the household.
So,
okay, I'm listening.
That's what I'm saying in an ideal situation, but this leaves Nigerians with less disposable income. Disposable income is extra cash that you can save on stuff or buy some other stuff that's not related to the house. So people don't have that as much anymore because they have to spend so much on the priority concerns, which is household expenditure, accommodation, and food. In fact, if we were to break that number to the barest minimum, we'll say that that 60%, you might see 50% over being food and accommodation alone, because cost of housing has gone up, price of food has gone up astronomically compared to the previous year. And I'm sure those are the things that are taking a chunk of this money. In terms of numbers, right? Like if you read that article, you will still see that by the time we broke it down and did some analysis, you realize that Nigerians still spend less than 750 naira to eat on a daily basis. That's a 3 square meal. That's the whole of the day. 750 naira. That does not even make sense, right? In actual time. But yeah, we are saying the number is high, but at the end of the day, when you break it per capita, the number is actually abysmal.
It makes me worry about what we're eating with those figures. I'm just saying less than 750 naira on a daily basis.
Yeah.
What are we eating? Does that money contribute to a healthy diet? I'm just wondering now. But let's not get into the lifestyle part of it. Let's talk about the numbers. All right. So looking at government consumption expenditure, that declined by 3.97% year-on-year basis, and that was standing at 4.06 trillion. So is this a cause for worry if the government spending is reducing?
I think that's not far-fetched. It has been a very popular conversation where we have to talk about government having revenue crisis, revenue problem, budget deficit year in, year out, spending most of our funds on servicing debt and whatnot. So yeah, that is also what we are seeing reflected here. So that's why we are having huge budget allocated to some areas of the economy. It doesn't mean that at the end of the day we are going to spend all those money, because if the money does not come out and at the end of, and you still your loans still could not meet those expenditure or those obligations, at the end of the day some of those things you still have to cut them along the line. So that's what we're saying. Spending from the government is also reducing as a result of the crunch in their own revenue. Oil revenue has not been doing well, in quote, because of crude oil vandalism and oil theft and whatnot, and the volatility in the oil market. And as well as the fact that we have not been able to harness our ability to collect as much tax from the people. We've not been able to increase our tax bracket or tax bucket, right, in this case. So those have affected the revenue of the federal government, and that's also playing out. And that figure is for the federal government, state government, local government. So it appears it is playing down even to the lowest level of government.
I'm just wondering, is it then a cycle, and is it like a downward spiraling cycle if we've got that crunch in government expenditure, but the increase in people's expenditure, especially household expenditure? How do we then start to figure out how to bring down household expenditure? Questions.
Well, unfortunately for Nigerians, so we need to be very creative with where we spend our money, and that's the reason why Nairametrics has always been at the forefront of giving people news and information on how to invest, make more money, so again how to minimize your costs. Because the fact that things are going up, yes, there are some things you cannot control. For example, food you can't control, but there are some other additional things like inflation. Yeah, you can't control inflation, yeah, but you can control what you take. So when we're growing up, they'll say, cut your clothes according to your size. And then
we've been cutting the yams, Samuel. We've been cutting the yams. You have not seen them cutting yet. It's not selling whole I don't know. They cut up chunks.
So if you notice now, people are leaving Lagos and they are moving to places like Ilorin or Moyo State, Ogun State, some remote areas where they can actually operate and work remotely. That's for those who can actually work remotely. So people are finding ways of reducing their costs, either from the area of accommodation or from the area of food and whatnot. I know people who grow what they eat now in their gardens so that they don't have to buy as much outside. So people are becoming very creative with the way they spend their money, because they realize if you leave it open to the Nigerian reality, you would probably just go bankrupt, or you never save or invest.
Okay, so quick question now, still more questions on household consumption and expenditure. What's Nigeria's ranking in the global hunger index, despite the fact that we're spending 57 trillion naira in 6 months on household expenditure?
Unfortunately, we are one of the final 13 or 12. We're like 103 out of 121. So
I feel like,
and of course that takes you back takes us back to the 750 naira, because even in the article you saw that Nigerians spend at least 10,000 naira to cook a pot of jollof rice for 5 people for a meal. And that means if you break that down, 2,000 naira at the very least for one person per meal. Now, Nigerians are spending an average of 750 naira for maybe, I know probably in Nigeria we do a 101, eat in the morning and eat in the night, or eat in the afternoon, and that covers for the whole day. But 750 naira for a day compared to 2,000 naira for a meal. When would we fall down that hunger index? Of course, it's most likely or definite that we'll definitely be amongst those.
If you're watching on YouTube right now, I just feel like my whole face is a purple meme. Like, I don't know what to. I don't like this maths that we're doing on air, Samuel.
Sorry, I'm not.
We've come to the end of the show. I feel like the answers you were going to give me were just going to keep making me think about life and think about my next plate of food. But yeah, times are tough, people. But like you said, and I think that's what we need to focus on, right? It's the creativity. Because for the things you can't control, you can't control them. But for the things you can control, get creative. Yeah, and so Nairametrics, let's be going over to Nairametrics. You guys had better teach us how to farm and get our food from our backyard to our tables on Nairametrics so that we know, y'all, that's part of the creativity, okay?
Yeah, you're creating products for us. We'll think about it.
I'm watching out for your next article, and it better have that spark that you've been talking about. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you here on Business Express. Look forward to you coming in again to discuss the next article. But till then, have a wonderful day. All right.